Hi everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar on how to run reports to help you reconcile your VAT return in Sage 50 accounts. My name's Tina and I'm going to be your host for the next half hour or so. So just before we get going, I'd like to take you through a bit of housekeeping. Now, if you've attended any of our webinars before, you will be familiar with this already, but just for anyone new, you'll notice that you will be muted throughout the session. I absolutely do want you to ask any questions that you may have though, so please feel free to submit these via the questions panel on the right-hand side. Joining me today, I have my colleagues Jackie, James and Laurie, and they're all ready and waiting to answer as many of your questions as possible. So please keep them busy. Just to make you aware, we do have a large number of attendees today, so we will just be focusing on answering as many key or common questions as possible. Now, if for any reason you don't have your question answered, please take a look in the Sage Help Centre or contact our support team for further help. Today's slides are going to be available for you to download during the session via the handouts icon in the panel. But just to let you know that you'll also be able to access the handout after the session in Sage City, where you'll also be able to see the session FAQs as well as a session recording. So if you just watch out for an email around an hour or so after today's session, and that's going to point you to everything you need. So let's look at what we're going to be covering this afternoon. So I'm shortly going to run a quick poll. So this is just to see which VAT schemes that you're all using. I'll then take a look at the drill down feature with you in the VAT return and how to run your detailed VAT report. I'll also be explaining which day books you need to run to be able to reconcile to your VAT return and how you go about trying to reconcile any differences you might find. And then finally, we'll touch on other VAT schemes. Now, if you are on a VAT scheme other than standard, the session will still be useful to you because the principles involved in the reconciliation are much the same. There's only some slight differences. So I'm just going to set the poll running shortly to find out which VAT schemes you're all registered for. So it should start appearing on your screens shortly. So just while I'm waiting for that to appear, I'll run through the options that you've got available to you just in case you're not sure. So standard VAT is where VAT is declared at the point of invoice. VAT Cash Accounting is declared at the point of payment. Flat rate is where you pay HMRC a fixed rate of VAT, and that depends on your type of business. And for partial exemption, you'll probably be doing some sort of manual calculation outside of the software to work out how much VAT you can actually recover. Now, don't worry if you don't know, just select the other option and also do that if you're on any other VAT scheme other than the 4 that I've listed above. Okay, so I'm just waiting for some votes to come in. I'll just want to get that up to around about the 75% mark before I close the poll. So thanks to those of you who've submitted that so far. Nearly there, keep them coming. Okay, so I've just closed the poll there. So just to share the results with you, we've got 78% of you are on standard VAT. We've got 12% of you on VAT cash accounting. We've got no attendees today on the flat rate scheme, 8% on partial exemption, and 3% are either other or they're not sure. So thanks everyone for completing that, because it's great for me to have some insight on this. It just means that I can make sure I'm delivering content that's relevant to you. Okay, so I'm going to start by talking to you about the drill down feature in the VAT return. Now, this is a feature that's quite often missed, but it's really useful because it allows you to see exactly how the figures in each box on the VAT return are made up. So I'm just going to switch screens to show you this in the software, and you'll actually have slides explaining what I'll be showing you. Okay, so hopefully you'll all be able to see my Sage 50 accounts software on screen now. So just to demo, from the VAT menu down at the left-hand side, I'm going to select the VAT return icon from the top, and I need to enter the date of my return in this middle section here. So in this example, I'm going to run my VAT return from July to September. So I just set the dates there, and then I'm going to click on Calculate VAT Return. Now, sometimes this window might appear if you have earlier unreconciled transactions prior to the dates of the VAT return. So I'll always click Include to make sure they're included correctly. So if we focus now on the figures on the right-hand side, we can see that we've got figures in several of the boxes. Now you'll also see a drill down box to the right of most of the figures shown, which I've highlighted for you on the slides. So if I click on the drill down next to box 1, for example, a new window opens showing me the next level of detail making up the figure in that box. So this is box 1, and in here we can see the tax codes applicable to that box listed in the first column. So we can see T0 down to T20, albeit not everything is listed there. And the transaction types included in the box are shown along the top. So I can see VAT values that I have in here for sales invoices, sales credits, any bank receipts, and any journal credits. Now at this point, I can choose to export this information to Excel via this To Excel button at the bottom left. Or if I want to see how a particular figure in this window is made up, I can actually drill down to a further level. So drill down to transactional level by double clicking on a value. So let's say I'm going to double click on the figure for sales invoices on the T1 tax code. So when I double click on that, it shows me each transaction being included within that figure. So I can see at a glance how that figure is made up. And again, this can be sent to Excel at the click of a button. So this drill down feature is a really good way for you to find out which tax codes impact which box on the VAT return. And I've also added links to both the UK and ROI Help Centre articles that you can reference at any time. So I'm just going to recap that again for you. So click on the drill down next to a box to see values per tax code and transaction type, and then double click on a value to drill down to transactional level. Okay, so I'll just close out of there and I'm going to go back to the slides. So if you just bear with me. Okay, so moving on now to the detailed VAT report. Now this report gives you much the same information as you'll have seen in the drill down feature. The benefit of the report though is you can see all of the detailed information for each box in a single report. Again, when you're preparing your VAT return, like I've just shown you on the demo, in step 2, you can select the print VAT return option to access the different reports available. Now, I would always recommend that you run the detailed report when trying to reconcile your figures, basically because it's the most comprehensive. Now, if you'd like to see any unreconciled transactions prior to the current VAT return period, you can have that on a separate report called Earlier Unreconciled Transactions. Please be aware that the transactions are already included in the detailed VAT return report by default, so this is purely optional. So your end result is going to look something a bit similar to this. So I just want to let you know that this report can be quite lengthy, and that just depends on the number of transactions that you have included on the VAT return. What it's giving you is a box-by-box breakdown of every transaction impacting the VAT return, and that's by transaction type and tax code. So you can print this off if you want, or you can export the data to view in Excel. Just choose the option that's most suitable for you. So I've kept my data quite simple for this session, just for the purpose of the demo, but your data could be a lot larger than the data set I have today. So once we've got our detailed VAT report confirming everything that's included in the VAT return, what are we going to check it against to compare? So this is where your daybook reports come in. Now, there are a lot of daybook reports available in the software, so it's completely understandable if you're not sure which ones you need to run to compare to your detailed VAT report. So I'm going to explain this all for you now. So to access the various daybook reports available to help you reconcile your VAT return, while you're in step 2 again, this time select the other option for reconciliation reports. The daybook reports that appear here will depend on which VAT scheme you're actually registered for, and you'll only see the reports that are going to be relevant to that VAT scheme. So on the slide here in this example, we can see it says standard VAT in the window, and we can see there are folders further down shown for the different areas of the software. So you can see bank, customer, supplier, etc. And they will each hold the required daybook reports. I'll give you an example in which reports you need to run to reconcile box 1 in your VAT return. So based on what I can see in the drill down in box 1, I need to run the following reports available in the customer folder. I must run these for the same date range as my VAT return. So in this example, it would be July to September. So I would need to run the Daybooks Customer Invoices report for any sales invoice transactions, the Daybooks Customer Credits report for any sales credit note transactions. Now for the receipts column, it's a little bit different because there are 3 different types of transaction that could appear in this box. So from the bank folder, I should run the Daybooks Bank Receipts, the Daybooks Cash Receipts, and the Daybooks Credit Card Receipts reports. And finally, if you have any values in the journal credits column, which in this example I do, but you may not, you should run the Daybooks Nominal Ledger from the Nominals folder. And thankfully, that's it for box 1. I would like to make you aware that depending on the types of transactions you have entered in your data, that you may not need to run all of these reports that I've mentioned. So for example, if you don't have an account for credit card receipts, or you don't have any figures in the journal credits column, you wouldn't actually need to run those reports. So the reports you need are going to be fewer, okay? The daybook reports required are actually driven by what's on the detailed VAT report, and I'm going to move on to that next. I love an example, so I'm going to give you another example. So on this slide, I've just zoomed in to focus only on reconciling box 1 of the detailed VAT report. So on here, we can see I've got the following transaction types appearing. So I've got sales invoices that I've got highlighted there for you in green. I've got a sales credit there in dark blue. I've got a bank receipt in dark green. And I've also got a journal credit, which is in kind of a tealy sort of colour. So because I'm driving from the VAT report detailed, this means the daybook reports I need to reconcile with the detailed VAT report are Daybooks Customer Invoices, Daybooks Customer Credits, Daybooks Bank Receipts, but not cash receipts and not credit card receipts, because I've only got BR transaction types on this report. If I did have any cash receipts, they would have a type of CR as opposed to BR, and any credit card receipts would show as VR instead of BR. And then finally, the Daybooks Nominal Ledger, and again, I'm just going to be looking specifically at JC transactions only. So I'm going to carry on with the theme of focusing on box 1 on the VAT return. So how exactly do we go about reconciling this detailed VAT report with the day books? What exactly is it that you're supposed to be looking for? So let's compare the sales invoices on the detailed VAT report to the customer invoices day book. What we're looking for is to match the transaction numbers and the tax amount on each report. Let's start looking at the transactions that we can see on both reports. So if you look at the transaction number columns down at the left-hand side, we can see that transactions 33, 34, 35 and 36 appear on both reports, and the tax amounts match. So we can easily tick these off each report because they appear on both. Now, if at this stage all transactions match on each report, it's happy days for you. You can move on to the next section on the VAT return and compare it to the next daybook report. But in my example, my transactions don't match, and what I need to do now is to understand why. So what I'm going to start off with is looking at what we are left with on the detailed VAT report. We can see that transaction 32 appears on the VAT return, but not on the daybook. So for these transactions, we should always check the transaction date. So we can see that this transaction has a date earlier than the date I ran the VAT return for. So remember, this was July to September, and that date is the 28th of June. Now, this transaction should definitely appear on the VAT return, basically because it'll have been missed from the previous return, probably down to it being entered late, so a late entry that was posted after the previous return was ran. So because I can explain why this transaction appears as a difference on the VAT return, I'm happy that the VAT report is correct for box 1, sales invoices. Okay, doesn't end there though. We also have a difference on the customer invoices daybook report. Transaction 37 appears on the daybook report, but not the VAT return. So for these transactions, we should always check the tax code. Now we can see this transaction has a T0 tax code, which has a 0 tax value. So it would never appear in box 1 on the VAT return because there is no tax element. It does have a net amount listed, which means it will appear on the VAT return, but in box 6, which picks up net figures. So again, at this point, I just need to confirm, am I happy that this transaction is on the correct tax code? If it is, I'm happy that this daybook report is correct and the two reports are actually reconciled with each other for this section. If it's not on the correct tax code, I need to edit the transaction within the software. I need to make sure it's placed on the correct tax code, and then I would run the VAT return again to make sure it's picked up correctly. So for the purpose of the demo, I'm just going to say that this transaction is correct and that these two reports reconcile. What I would then do is I'd then repeat the process for the remaining daybook reports linked to box 1. So just to summarise what I've covered on the last slide, when you find differences between the reports you're comparing while reconciling, it's usually going to be for one of 3 reasons, and the first 2 of which I explained in the previous slides. So it's either going to be an earlier unreconciled transaction, which is your late entry, or a tax code with no tax value, for example, a T0, a T2, okay? The third one could be that a T9 transaction appears on the daybook reports. Now, T9 transactions will not hit any box on the VAT return. So if you find any T9 transactions on your daybook reports, you need to check to see if the transactions should be on that tax code or not. Again, if it's on that tax code in error, you need to correct the transaction's tax code and run the VAT return again, just to make sure it's picked up in the correct box. Now, there's a handy report available in the reconciliation reports window to show you any T9 transactions that have been entered in the software. So if you open the transaction analysis folder and then financials, the report's called T9 transaction listing, and again, run it for the same date as your VAT return. Now, I'm very aware that I've only focused so far on reconciling box 1 in the session. Now, you might also want to reconcile box 4 for your purchase tax amounts. So this slide explains which daybook reports you need to run to reconcile box 4 on your VAT return. So you can take a look at that after today's session. It's much the same process. What you'll find is the reports are simply the opposite of box 1. So instead of customer reports, it's supplier. Instead of bank receipts, it's bank payments. And instead of journal credits, it would be journal debits if indeed there were any journal entries being picked up. So just to briefly explain how this process differs for those of you that are on the VAT Cash Accounting scheme. So in a similar way, you access your reconciliation reports exactly the same. So that's step 2 in your VAT return and then reconciliation reports. Where the difference is that you can see I have slightly different reports available to run, and you can also see that it says VAT cash scheme rather than standard VAT, which was on the earlier slide. This means you can really be confident that you're not going to be running the wrong reports for your VAT scheme. So they're kind of limited based on that setting within the software. So these are the differences in the reports that you need to run on VAT Cash Accounting. So the process of the reconciliation exactly the same, it's just different reports. So it's daybooks, customer receipts, instead of the daybooks for invoices and credits that you'd have seen on standard VAT. It's daybooks, bank, cash and credit card receipts, which is the same as standard VAT. Now, a new report we've not seen so far is the customer refunds report. So that's an extra one for VAT Cash Accounting. And then finally, the same as standard, it's the daybooks nominal ledger, again, just for your JC transactions. So please remember the process of reconciling the reports is exactly the same. You're just looking at different reports, but you're still looking for any differences to decide whether they are okay to stay as they are, or whether you need to amend the transaction before running the VAT return again. And again, for VAT Cash Accounting, I've added the reports needed for you to reconcile box 4. Okay, so again, they're going to be the opposite of box 1. Okay, so we are coming towards the end of the session. So what I'm going to do now is to just share with you some frequently asked questions we receive on the VAT return. Now, remember, I'd always recommend comparing the detailed VAT report to the daybook reports to reconcile, but sometimes we get asked why certain figures from the VAT return don't compare to other areas of the software. So, for example, we'll often get asked, why is box 1 not 20% of box 6 and box 4 not 20% of box 7? So not every tax code has a tax value hitting box 1 for sales or box 4 for purchases. So for example, we saw a T0 transaction in one of the reports. T2 would be exactly the same. So the 20% theory would only ever work if all of your transactions were on a tax code with a 20% rate. So that's basically the reason why it doesn't always match in the mathematics as such. Another one is, why do my VAT figures not reconcile to my nominal balances? Again, the balances on your nominal accounts are always real time as of today's date. Now, as you'd generally be running your VAT return for a particular period in the past, it would be highly unlikely that these two would ever match. And also on VAT Cash Accounting, it would never match either, because you may have unpaid invoices included in the nominal balances, and they wouldn't be picked up on the VAT return until those invoices are actually paid. Okay, so What's really important when you're trying to reconcile any report, so this isn't just the VAT reports, you must really compare apples with apples. Don't compare apples with oranges or it's never going to work. And then finally, unreconciled transactions. I touched on this earlier. Remember, in step 2 of your VAT return, go to print VAT return and you'll find the option to print that report there. Okay, so kind of performing your VAT reconciliation really gives you confidence that your figures being submitted to HMRC are correct, just so you don't have to worry about fines, etc., for incorrect submissions. HMRC, however, are introducing some changes as of the 1st of January 2023. Sadly, they're introducing a new penalty system. Not particularly good news, and sorry to be the bearer of it. It is important, though, that you are aware of these changes that are coming into effect. So there are going to be 2 different kinds of penalties: a late submission penalty and also a late payment penalty. And I've included more detailed information regarding each penalty in the next 2 slides. So this is the late submission penalty information. So this is based on a points threshold, and that threshold varies for the various VAT submission frequencies. So before a penalty is issued, you have to have accumulated 5 points if you're submitting monthly, 4 if you're submitting quarterly, and 2 if you're submitting annually. Okay, so that's the first for the late submission. And the late payment penalty information is on the next slide. Again, the amount of this penalty varies in accordance with how late the payment is. So if it's up to 15 days late, you don't get any penalty, but at different stages after 15 days, you're going to be charged a different percentage of the amount due. Okay, now no one likes a fine, so this is just to give you fair warning before this comes into effect in January. And if you'd like any further information on that, please visit the link that I've put on the slides there. That takes you to the gov.uk website and it will give you further information. Okay, so back to reconciling your VAT return. Let's recap what I've shown you so far. So remember, the drill down feature can be used to investigate how a VAT box is calculated. The detailed VAT report provides a breakdown of each box separated into different transaction types and tax codes. And the daybook reports should always be run for the same period as the VAT return. So remember to compare your apples with your apples. You need to compare the correct reports, and those reports need to be run for the same correct dates. And if a transaction is missing from either of the reports, you need to investigate so you can basically make sense of why there is a difference. You may be happy leaving the transaction as it is and go, yeah, that's fine. If it's a mistake, the mistake must be corrected and the VAT return calculated again. Okay. So I've got a quick update for you on our upcoming webinars. Remember, they're all free for you to attend, so please sign up if any of the topics interest you or are going to prove useful to your business. So tomorrow we're running a session showing you how you can analyse your data using the filter and quick search features in the software. And on Thursday, we're running another VAT return session, this time focusing on the actual process of running and submitting your VAT return online, rather than just the reconciliation part, reconciling the VAT reports, which I've shown you today. So while my colleagues are finishing off answering your questions, I'd like to take the opportunity to remind you of the benefits you have available to you through Sage membership. So in a webinars we run for free. You can also access free training through Sage University. So if there's a topic you'd like to learn more about, pop over to sageu.com and have yourself a look around. You'll also have access to Sage City, our online community, which offers you forums on both Sage and non-Sage related topics. I'll be adding today's content to Sage City after the session, meaning you can access the slides, any FAQs, and recording of the session as well. So another great thing about Sage City is that you can also feed back any requests for changes in the software here too. So just watch out for the email, which should arrive an hour or so after the session, and that'll give you everything you need. And finally, just to explain a bit more about Sage Masterclasses. The member masterclasses aren't specific to Sage products. They're an opportunity for you to gain insight from world-leading experts on a variety of topics. So for example, season 1 focuses on finding and keeping great people. Season 2's on unlocking unlocking productivity, and they're relevant to all businesses. So if you think this is something that's going to prove useful, please go and check it out via the link at the bottom of the slides. And if you'd like to learn more about Sage membership, there's actually a webinar scheduled on Thursday, the 10th of November at 11 o'clock. So please register for that if you're interested in finding out more. Okay, so that brings us to the end of today's session. So please feel free to stay around for the next few minutes or so if you're waiting for an answer to a question, or if you find you've got any further questions to ask. I'm sorry if you don't get all questions answered. If that is the case for you, please try the Sage Help Centre or contacting our support team for further help. If you do find you've got what you need and you want to leave the session, I'd just like to thank you all for joining me today, and I hope to see you on another session very soon. Remember, you'll get an email in around an hour or so with links to the webinar schedule and the recorded session from today, so you'll always have that to refer back to if need be. So I'll just wait and see what the situation with the questions are. So if you want to hang around, please do. If you're done, thank you very much. Still a few questions waiting to be answered here, so I'm not going to log off just yet. For those of you who are asking about signing up for Thursday's webinar, on the email that you'll get around an hour or so after the session, there will be a link on there and you will be able to sign up for Thursdays and any future webinars that we have released on there. Okay, there's a few people leaving now. For those of you that are still here, again, thank you. They logged on for another few minutes just to give my colleagues the chance to answer some more of your questions. Katie are asking, do we get a printout of the questions and answers? The frequently asked questions in the session will be available on Sage City. Again, you'll have the link to that in the email that you'll get around an hour or so after the session. Okay, I think it looks like the questions are drying up now. I think pretty much everything's been answered actually, so that's brilliant. Thank you very much to Jackie, to James and to Laurie. So I'll shortly end the session. Just like to thank you all again for your participation, and I hope to see you on a future session very soon. So take care everybody. Bye for now.